Hey, this is Grayson Peltier. This is the Fixerpunk podcast, and this is a Fixing the Fixerpunk episode. On these episodes, I share some stories from my personal life in the hopes that maybe it will provide some important lessons or just some entertainment for the audience. Lessons on personal and social change at the same time is what we aim for, but most of the time, I wind up doing these just to help myself and just to talk about my own stuff, because talking into this microphone here is cheaper than the $450 it would cost me to see an autism therapist for each visit. So we'll start there. Money and mental health and self-improvement. The amount of money, I was doing some quick tallying things up. And the amount of money it would take for me to try to fully improve myself using the typical methods or using the appropriate methods is astronomically high. Whether we're talking about the mental health side, whether we're talking about the physical fitness side, this stuff can get super, super expensive. Now, I've tried to do a lot of things on my own. I've talked a lot on this show about stuff like accountability groups, trying to get people together, working together, sort of a pseudo mutual aid type approach. The last episode, I talked about advocacy involving health insurance and using the grievance process, which I am trying to use that to get insurance to cover my mental health services as well. But the thing I'm realizing is that so long as I have an HMO policy, it seems like they're never going to give me anybody who's actually specialized in my condition, which is autism. And I've been looking into a variety of options for therapy outside of the insurance network, but the costs are crazy, crazy high. So if you do the math, and I have a video on this on my TikTok at Fixerpunk, you're talking $400 for every single session, and that is $1,600 a month. That's like somebody's salary. Then you add on top of that, if you're going to get a specialist psychiatrist, that's like $500 a visit, $2,100 a month. That's definitely in the realm of what somebody's salary would be, and HMO isn't going to pay for a dime of it. So trying to fix your problems can get super, super expensive, and I think that's become all too obvious to anybody who's gone through the whole mental health system and the mental health process. And that's something that I'm working through and trying to find solutions and alternatives to get that. Now, a lot of it is that, and I've also mentioned a lot of how I don't like that therapists are very, very mechanized and routinized, especially when you're talking about the run-of-the-mill insurance provider therapists. They're just there basically to just tell you everything's okay in a way, or give you one specific model that they learn from some worksheet. They're not there to actually help you solve problems. I find that a lot of therapists don't really try to help you solve problems. They're just trying to get me to, I come in and I say, I'm not doing as well in my work. I'm not doing as well in my personal life. I'm overeating all the time. And they're just telling me, okay, that's okay. And ignoring the material reality of the situation and not really helping me to improve it. So I've thought about shifting over into getting coaching. And I have to be careful anytime I talk about spending money. And this is the thing. And if any of you who are living with somebody else, maybe you're living with a parent, maybe you have a spouse, maybe it's one of those situations where you're living with somebody and even though you have your own separate money, you work, you make your own money, but they, in a way, you're subject to sort of their judgment on your finances. And I have to be very, very careful about that. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to present the idea of going through instead of spending. And this is, I think, the way I'm going to save it. Position this is really cost savings, because if I were to do just an ADHD coaching program, that's $100 a session as compared to $400 a session for these ADHD and autism specialized psychologists. And really what I need is practical support to help me think through better ways of doing things, because even though on this podcast and talking to people, I can very critically analyze other people and their lives and provide good advice, but I can't hold myself accountable. Even with regular therapy, like they tell me something and it's sort of in one ear and out the other. And I don't really absorb I absorb the information, but I don't use it in a practical context. I sometimes joke around, if I could only have somebody live with me for a week and observe like all the ways that I make a mess, I'm disorganized, I am recording a podcast in the middle of my work day, and I'm thinking that's productive, but maybe that's not the most productive thing. If I had a sounding board throughout my day, somebody that I could trust, then that would be great. But obviously, that's so super, super, super expensive. That's never going to happen. But if I have somebody who's actually helping me on a practical level to make practical improvements in my life, instead of just saying, that's okay, or worse yet, it's just autism, you're never going to get better, just accept that you are going to be a failure. And that's something that I am not going to do. I'm not going to accept that I am going to be a failure, because there are some really, really nice, bright spots in my life. And I've actually been seeing a lot of improvement, even though the thing is, it doesn't feel like I've made massive, massive progress in anything. In my fitness, which I've been talking about quite a bit, I'm not at that full gear ready level right now. And I know I can, like, when I go into and look at myself in the mirror, I can see that my body is starting to fit my own personal kayfabe a little bit more. And that's kind of a concept that I've kind of made up, is this concept of having a personal kayfabe and a storyline around yourself. And I think that can actually be a very powerful thing. Like a pro wrestling storyline, you can view yourself, and I've spoken a lot about the Adam Page storyline. You can go through my episodes on that. But having your own like personal storyline of, this is who I am. Yes, going ahead and accepting that you're not as successful as you should be, but then seeing a story and a redemption arc, and ultimately leading up to what would make you your own champion, and rewriting the narrative of your own life in that way and taking steps toward that. I think that's sort of a powerful thing. And I think that it's powerful along with that, just like a pro wrestler who's chasing a title, that you get yourself into really, really good shape. And that's something that I've been working very hard on. And it's been good for me, because now I can actually get out of the shower, look at myself in the mirror, and start cutting promos. And sometimes that's a little therapeutic to me. That now I look like somebody who's a little bit more of a badass. And I think that's helpful to me, but I still don't feel like I've reached my potential there. And I'm still at the point where going to the beach, going to the pool is not something that I'm terribly confident with. Something that I want to bring up, and I'm probably going to have an article up about this on the prowrestlingmusings.com website, is the whole body shaming of Adam Cole. Adam Cole is a wrestler in AEW, and people are saying he's kind of out of shape. And even other wrestlers like Booker T are saying he needs to gain muscle, things like that. I remember when this whole Adam Cole body shaming started. It was at the beginning of my like fitness challenge back in like February. And in February, I wound up looking at myself in the mirror and looking at my pictures and saying, I actually, Adam Cole was kind of a physique. I thought, okay, I can get to the level that Adam Cole is at. I think he looked like he was in pretty decent shape, not in like the perfect, ideal, like Instagram model shape, but you don't have to be a fighter. I thought that's where I want to be. But then people were like saying, no, he looks fat, he looks out of shape. Other people saying he looks like he needs to gain muscle. I was like, oh crap, if that's what being out of shape looks like, if Adam Cole's what being out of shape looks like, then darn, I am in really, really bad straits here. And that in a way it motivated me, in a way it also kind of made me feel very disappointed. And the research on body shaming, specifically in people who have obesity, shows that it's largely negative. In terms of like constructive criticism, I don't know if there's as much evidence on that in terms of coaching, but I could see how even that can get a little bit negative. And setting aside what Adam Cole should do in his own strength and conditioning program, which obviously I'm pretty sure he's working on it very hard, things take a long time. Like, I thought I was going to be able to go through the whole idealized transformation in a few months and get myself in really good shape. But no, there are bumps along the way, and there are lots of things that can go wrong. And that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about how people's physiques are progressing, especially when you're talking about somebody like a pro wrestler who is who's on TV every week or at least every other week. There's no like off season. A lot of the people that you just see pictures of online have an off season. Like bodybuilders have an off season. Even other athletes in sports where you're taking your shirt off have an off season or a long period where you're not seeing them as much on TV. Fighters in like UFC have a long training camp period before a major fight. That's a consideration there. Obviously, that's not the case for me, but I just had to kind of get that off my chest before I put that article out, which will go into the Adam Cole situation more in depth. But I actually got to see AEW back at the beginning of the month, and it was one of those times where I felt like I have achieved a whole lot. I was almost not going to go to that show because of Adam Page dropping the title, but I went to the show. I actually managed to meet a few good people. I took a picture with the AEW title belt, took a picture with Darby Allin. Darby Allin was such a nice guy. I was so glad to meet him. I stuck around until like 9 o'clock at the arena, just hanging around, trying to meet people after the show, because I was going to make this a thing. I don't get to meet very many wrestling fans, so I was going to make this sort of a social event for me, and it was a great, great experience, and I'm glad I went, and it felt like I had actually accomplished something, which is something I haven't felt in a long time. Now, for me, for a long, long while, with my concussion and my PTSD, I would have never been able to tolerate being in a loud, crowded environment like that. Being able to do that, that's an accomplishment. The fact that I could afford to buy a ticket, that's an accomplishment for me. Of course, like, my mom wasn't all too crazy about me going to this wrestling show, but it turned out great, and I was so glad that I went, because it was definitely, even though it wasn't like the most grand thing, it certainly was kind of a letdown with Adam Page not being champion. It was a moment where I got to celebrate how far I've come here, in a strange way, because I was able to spend the money. I was able to pay for an Uber to get from Orange County up to LA, up to the Forum, without worrying about it. I was able to get the ticket. Got myself a couple merch items. Even though my financial situation is not perfect, it's far from perfect, I felt it was important for me to celebrate what I have done and all the time and the energy that I've spent, and be happy with what I have managed to achieve. And in many cases, if you put yourself in the situation that you're expecting some kind of nice reward like that, or something fun, something that you love, you'll wind up being more motivated. Like, in the day, like, I thought that during the day before the show, I was like barely going to get any work done. But I got quite a bit of work done. Even the night before, I was really energetic, really pumped up. The day after, I don't know, I kind of felt a little bit off, a little bit tired, a little sick. No COVID, tested negative. And I was wearing a N95 the whole time, pretty much, except for outdoors and a couple times to talk while inside. But those things can have a big impact on you and help you to see, this is how far I've come. And it was just a really nice experience. I got, in terms of the matches were really good. It's always great when you have the Young Bucks, and you know, Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley really served as, like, in the absence of Hangman Page, Moxley really served as the ambassador of the AEW movement. Gave a great speech after the show, put on a really nice match with Daniel Garcia, where he won. It's the main event. I got to meet another podcaster, Luke Schopf. I apologize if I am butchering that name, but Luke Schopf of Luke Has a Podcast, which is a podcast that's focused on a lot of like music, sort of indie music, but then also on pro wrestling. He tells the story of how he became a wrestling fan. I got to meet him in the parking lot. Really, really nice guy. Really great to meet him. Recommend you check out Luke Has a Podcast, spelled just as it sounds. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. But what I wanted to get a little bit more into was in terms of spending on things that you need to try to make yourself better. Like, how do you budget that out along with things that are fun, that'll excite you, and they'll keep you motivated? Now, I'm completely imperfect with these kinds of things. My budgeting technique's kind of crappy. I just try to automate as much as possible. But now that I'm adding in this expense, possibly of getting a coach, I have to find a way to do that, and I can pull it off, but sometimes when you have outside criticism or people outside of you, it kind of makes you second guess yourself in terms of what you can and can't do, and especially when you have somebody that doesn't have the same priorities as you. And positioning things, as a political communication consultant, I should know how to position things, how to say, well, this is, and how to lay things out and say, this is why this is a good idea. But sometimes it's a little hard when it's your own personal life and you're emotionally invested in stuff. That's still a challenge that I'm working through. But I have to have a talk with my mom about starting the ADHD coaching. Obviously, this is using my money. It's not using her money, but I'm under her roof, so I have to have a discussion with her about that. And I think that just using that cost comparison is going to help a little bit. And I think I have to make it super, super clear that the insurance isn't really paying for this stuff. And look, I know the advocacy stuff. I'm doing the grievances and all that stuff with the therapists. And this is the most economical alternative to me going to an ADHD or autism therapist, for me to do somebody who's not necessarily a therapist, but is going to coach me through some of these things, while maybe I get some of that emotional support from whatever therapist of the day the insurance is able to send me to. Because if they're not going to pay for a therapeutic intervention that's going to be focused on my executive functioning, then I might as well not even waste the hour a week with their expert. And taking that leap and saying, I'm just going to do this on my own. Now, where I went wrong, I actually was about to spend some money on some fitness coaching that was less money, quite a bit less money than what I'm going to be spending for ADHD coaching or for ADHD therapy. But because it would involve changing how I eat, that's a touchy subject with my mom. My mom is going to notice that I'm eating differently. So I fessed up to starting this program kind of under the radar. But I confessed it to her. I thought I was going to be able to just get on this fitness program, be coached without my mom noticing, but didn't really work out that way. I wound up telling her in the worst way, and it was kind of emotional and weird. So I have to, that's something that I definitely have to work on, is trying to explain my priorities in a way that makes sense to the other stakeholders, which if I put it like that in my own mind, as somebody who does this kind of stuff, in communicating, especially to people in government, to other types of stakeholders as to why they should invest in different programs or believe in certain ideas. If I plan it out that way, which that's one thing I'm really bad at, is planning out things in my own personal life. I'm looking at a ton of my laundry that I still haven't done. I think I can get through it. And maybe this time with the ADHD coaching, because it's something that's going to be in terms of, it's probably going to increase my income. I'm putting this money in, hoping that I'm going to be able to now be more productive, not just do more podcasts, but also get more paying work and stick on my work well and do a good job at it and get a good promotion or get increases in pay from my clients and things like that. And viewing it as a return on investment thing. I think I'll be a bit better off than when I was, even though it was a much lesser dollar amount that I was talking about for the fitness coaching, something that's based upon things where my mom would say, you don't have a weight problem. And to that, I feel like responding to her with all the Adam Cole body shaming posts, but of course that's not a good idea. My mom wouldn't get it anyway. And she would probably say, what do those wrestling fans have to do with anything? What does this guy's body have to do with yours? But maybe if I position it in that way, maybe I'll get a little more progress. And then I'm working with my aunt to have the discussion as well. So it's a little bit less of just a big surprise, I'm going to do this, and more like this is going to really, really help me, and this is going to make me really happy. And I know that she was pretty opposed to me going to the wrestling show. But after I came back and the day of, she started to warm up to me going to it. And after seeing how happy I was coming into the house, and hugging her and being and feeling way better about myself after seeing that, look, I made it this far. I could do this now. I can have fun, how I can go out, do stuff on my own and have fun. For the first time in a long time, seeing the change in my countenance, she opened up to it. And I think that I can position it again to her in the same way, because she knows that, she actually says that when I'm happy in the house is when she's happiest in the house too. So let's see how that all goes. And you'll know that the ADHD coaching, and then maybe I might get a second opinion on my medications as well. You'll know that stuff's working because you'll start to see more episodes here on the podcast. My mom will hopefully be happy because I'm earning more money. But hopefully you'll be happy with getting more content here on the podcast. And if you have any comments on the content, whether you're happy with it, upset by it, I said something wrong, I got a fact wrong, whatever, feel free to reach out to me, Grayson@GraysonPeltier.com, Greyson @GreysonPeltier.com. And I will see you again, hopefully very soon. Hopefully I might make some extra episodes on the grievance process and the appeals process. Might make some on worker claims, some more of those brief advocacy notes formats so that you can learn some actual practical lessons in a real convenient 10 to 15 minute format. But just make sure you follow the podcast, because something will be coming up soon, and hopefully it'll be coming a lot more frequently. And I really hope that I will see you again next time here on the Fixerpunk podcast.